Hi.
Hello again. We're in the Pure Worship book, page
Yep.
54,
Mm-hmm.
and they're dealing in this chapter with Ezekiel chapter 8. We've reached verse 7, so I'll read verses 7 to 12. This is in the ESV. And he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked, behold, there was a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig in the wall. So I dug in the wall, and behold, there was an entrance. And he said to me, Go in, see the vile abominations that they are committing here. So I went in and saw, and here and there, engraved on the wall all around, was every form of creeping thing and loathsome beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel. And before them stood 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel, with Jaazaniah the son of Shaphan standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and the smoke of the cloud of incense went up. Then he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the dark, each in his room of pictures? For they say, The Lord does not see us, the Lord has forsaken the land.
So what the Watchtower comments on is at their subheading 70 elders offering incense to false gods. They say, boring through a wall and entering the inner courtyard near the temple altar, Ezekiel now saw disturbing wall carvings of creeping things and loathsome beasts and all the disgusting idols. Those wall carvings represented false gods. Even more disturbing is what Ezekiel saw next. 70 of the elders of the house of Israel were standing in the darkness and offering incense to the false gods. Under the law, the burning of sweet-smelling incense represented the acceptable prayers offered up by faithful worshippers. However, the incense that those 70 elders offered up to false gods was an unholy stench to Jehovah. Their prayers were like an offensive odor to him. Those elders fooled themselves into thinking Jehovah is not seeing us, but Jehovah did see them, and he showed Ezekiel exactly what they were doing in his temple. What can we learn from Ezekiel's account of those 70 Israelite elders who offered incense to false gods? For our prayers to be heard by God and to keep our worship pure in his eyes, we must remain faithful even in the darkness. Let us keep in mind that Jehovah's all-seeing eyes are ever upon us. If Jehovah is real to us, we will not do anything in private that we know is displeasing to him. Especially must congregation elders set a good example in Christian living. Congregation members rightly expect that an elder who stands before them and leads them in worship at a meeting is living by biblical principles, even in the darkness. That is, when others may not see him.
Oh my. These are all fine and noble words
Yeah.
to aspire to, but obviously if you're a Jehovah's Witness reading this in 2018 when it's published,
Yeah.
you think this applies to you, and you're made to think it applies to you. But how does it apply to your organization?
Mm-hmm.
When I saw the phrase in here, the phrase, what the elders of Israel are doing in the dark,
Yeah.
by the time this book is published in 2018, they know a lot about what's going on in the organization. The leaders do, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people who write this know a
Yeah.
lot more than the average JW does about what's really going on in the congregations around the world.
Yeah.
And yet you say this, well, because you apply all this to Christendom.
Yeah.
Not to your organization.
And you feel quite right about exposing scandals that have really already been exposed because they're published.
You know about them. Why do you know about them?
Yeah. How do you know about them? It's not because they tried to keep them secret. Oftentimes, they're the ones publishing a scandal.
Here's a good example.
And reacting to it.
Some of you know we're making a series called The History of Christianity. This is Kenneth Scott Lederette. This is a very basic Protestant history of the history of Christendom.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of sin in here. It's 1,500 or so pages.
Yeah.
A lot of sin, but a lot of good stuff too.
Yeah.
But when you do your history, you prune out
Same with the other
most of
one
the
that
stuff.
you read, the history that you read. The name escapes me now, but you read the whole book.
No Rauschenberg?
Well, there's another one.
John
Okay.
Wesley Brady.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brady was
Brady,
the one I was thinking of. So he tells the history, and he tells you the bad things that were happening and the good things that were happening. Most biographies are like that, or histories of the church.
So if you as a Jehovah's Witness know much about Christendom, it's only because it comes to them, the organization, through the filter of Christendom, books like this.
Yeah.
And then it's filtered by them, so that all the good stuff is pruned out and all the bad stuff remains.
Yeah. But when you read those histories, they don't try and cover over sins. They will talk about them as sins.
Yes.
As things that needed correcting, as needing to be exposed.
So
they see the principle of exposing it as part of our duty.
Because they think of themselves, if they're Protestants or Catholics, they think of themselves differently than you think of yourself as a witness. You think yourself as part of God's pure organization, doing God's will, whereas Christendom tends to think of people in Christendom tend to think of themselves as sinners needing forgiveness.
That's right.
Needing forgiveness.
Yeah. So they don't, the Watchtower covers over many sins, tries to hide them from the public, and the spin they will always put on it is because they don't want to besmirch God's organization, even more than God's organization, which he needs. So when it's all about you can put that spin on it.
You have to.
Yeah. And you're the one that's making this great claim about yourself.
That's right. That
God needs you. And if there's any mark, then a person can leave.
When some people criticize us for always criticizing the Watchtower, spending so many hours making hundreds and hundreds of videos about the Watchtower history, why do you have to keep bringing up the past? Why do you concentrate on Jehovah's Witnesses? And the answer to that is because they make absolute claims. Mm-hmm. They say you have to come to us for salvation. Christendom, even the Catholic Church, no longer says that. Mm-hmm. So the denominations of Protestantism have really never said that. That doesn't mean that an individual Baptist or an individual Brethren person doesn't think that way. But the institutions you're criticizing don't make these absolute claims. Yeah. But you do if you're in a cult. Mm-hmm. So we have to measure the degree of criticism that is due to you then by the claims you make.
Yeah. It's Christ you need, and it's Christ you must obey. And it's Christ that gives you forgiveness when you fall.
So in the day, for me, when I was an elder, I didn't know anything about scandals, but I learned that we've got dirty linen. When I became an elder, I learned there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the dark. Yes, some of it we exposed. Some of it nowadays has not been exposed. And that corruption is not just on a local level, it goes right to the top of the Watchtower.
And in some cases, the elders are asked to cover them over.
Yeah.
Not expose them. Certainly not report them to legal professionals.
Because it would besmirch Jehovah's reputation.
Yeah. But then you're not thinking about the people involved and the potential for danger in the future. Because you will not do this. You're saving your own reputation over hurting people.
Yeah. You're putting all of your children and grandchildren at risk in order to preserve the reputation of your organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's our link?
Actually, we're doing one of two called 1914 Cover-Up. And so we'll put the first of that. So this is more about the fact that they have had this habit of cover-ups from the very beginning.
And even when they have been forced to admit problems, such as in the Proclaimer's book, It was only after these things had already been exposed.
Yes.
And even then, there's a spin put on it that is really not
There's
appropriate.
always a justification, and we're really not too bad. We just made mistakes.
So the truth is that true repentance never happens in the Watchtower world, because always Jehovah's name is at stake. You can't admit that you sinned against Jehovah.
Yeah. So whatever you're covering up, it's the cover-up part that's a problem.
Yeah. See you next time.